Before vacuum cleaners whirred in hallways, before lemon-scented sprays filled the air, there was the feather duster, a quiet companion in the war against Victorian dust. Tonight, we'll follow the entire career of one humble salesman, not a general, not a politician, just a man with a satchel full of feathers. Through soot, silence, and fading trends, he walked cobbled streets with dignity, selling softness door to door in an age of coal and clamor. Settle in, let's dust off the forgotten life of a Victorian feather duster salesman and drift slowly into sleep. A gentleman of dust, morning routines on a foggy London street. Waking the streets, the salesman's boots hit the cobblestones. It's a Monday morning in 1873. The smog has already settled low across the rooftops of Clapham, clinging to the soot-blackened chimneys and iron railings with a kind of affectionate permanence. The sun, if it can be said to exist today, is no more than a pale coin, peering uncertainly through the smoke and steam that rises from underground grates and the windows of bakery basements. The Thames is nearby but unseen, hidden behind a curtain of mist and factory breath. You are a feather duster salesman, or more precisely, an agent of cleanliness in an age of relentless grime. Your name may not be recorded in any history book, but your mission is in its quiet way vital, to remove what London continually deposits on every available surface. The boots you wear are scuffed but sturdy, made of oxhide, laced tightly up the shin. They squeak faintly as you step onto the street, their sole is already darkened from yesterday's excursions. In one hand, you carry your display crate, a polished wooden box with a hinged lid, the inside lined with a faded velvet backing upon which rest your handmade feather dusters, 3 goose, 2 ostrich, and a new experimental model crafted from the tail feathers of Polish hens. This crate has been passed down. It once belonged to your uncle, who learned the art from his second wife's cousin, who in turn apprenticed under a chimney sweep-turned-brush maker. It is, if you think about it, a lineage of brushes, a history not taught in schools, but written in every tickle of feather against mantelpiece. Your jacket is olive wool, single-breasted, slightly patched under the arms. A frayed white kerchief is tucked into the collar of your shirt, which bears faint gray lines from an iron that was not quite hot enough. Presentation matters, though only in measured doses. Looking too clean, too polished would make your potential. Customers, maids, scullery boys, and the occasional well-off governess distrustful. What does a man know of dirt if he's never met it? You stop at your first house, number 46, a 3-story affair with ivy clawing up the brick like a slow, leafy fire. You knock on the tradesman's door, low and to the left of the grand front entrance. A boy answers, his face already smudged with coal dust. "Feather dusters, lad," you say, lifting the lid of your crate, just enough for the soft bristles to peep. Out, 6pence for goose, a shilling for ostrich. And I've got a hen mix that's good for corners. He squints, scratches his nose, and disappears. You wait, this is the morning ritual. Knock, wait, present. Most don't buy. Some already have a duster, or claim to. Others barter. One maid offered you a jar of pickled radish for a goose feather duster last week. You accepted. It was sharp but satisfying, the boy returns. She says maybe. Come back Thursday, always Thursday. You mutter as he shuts the door. Onward, you visit 5 more homes before the chimes of St. Mary's toll 8 times. Some households are too grand to answer. Others are too small to afford anything more than a damp rag and a bit of old shirt nailed to a stick. You understand this. Your clientele, while varied in class, shares one common struggle, the endless accumulation of dust. It floats in with the fog. It settles in the corners like a disobedient child. It creeps onto bookshelves and along the ridges of carved banisters. And so, on mornings like this, you offer them small hope, bound together. In a neat handle of polished beechwood and a poof of feathers, you stop near a coal yard for a brief rest. The scent of tar, horses, and mildew intermingles with your own musk, wax, sweat, and a faint note of lavender from the pouch tucked into your inner coat pocket. It's a sachet your sister gave you, supposedly to keep the feathers fresh. Though you suspect it's more for your own benefit, by 8:30, you reach Barrow Street, a neighborhood of shopfronts and tight alleyways. You greet the baker's assistant, who always nods but never speaks. You pass the apothecary, who once tried to buy an ostrich duster for his display cabinet of bottled leeches. At number 12 Barrow Street, you meet a loyal customer, Miss Underbow, a retired governess who now tutors Latin and insists on dust-free. Shelves. She wears 2 shawls, one plaid, one floral, and smells faintly of boiled cabbage. "Ah, Mr. Mallow," she says as you remove your hat. "Do you have anything for pianoforte legs?" The housekeeper insists they collect grime. You show her the hen feather duster with the narrow stem. It bends slightly at the neck, you explain, demonstrating. Excellent for navigating tight architectural features. She examines it as if it were a bishop's crozier, threepence off for loyalty. She asks, you smile. "Of course, madame." She returns with a purse the size of a hedgehog, full of coins, buttons, and what may be a tiny petrified apple. You make the sale. After she closes the door, you record the transaction in your tally booklet. One of your most treasured possessions. It's an oil-stained ledger, its edges curled like toast. Each page is lined with careful entries, dates, names, types of feathers sold, and a single column rating of customer satisfaction. Today's sales are modest so far, but the day is long. As you walk toward Fleet Lane, your fingers drift across the tops of the feathers in your crate. You think about how each one was plucked, cleaned, and shaped by your own hand. You remember boiling water on the hearth, the way wax smells when melted into wood grain, and how goose feathers curl when dried too close to the flamme. The work is repetitive, yes, the pay uneven, but it is your trade, and in it, there's a kind of dusty poetry, a kind of feathered devotion. You pause beside an alley where a chimney sweep leans against a wall, black-faced and yawning. He nods at your crate. "Still doing those?" He asks, you nod. "Still selling dust to fight dust," he chuckles. World's full of it indeed, you think. And someone's got to sell the solution, one soft bristle at a time. Afternoon showcases and feather economics in a dusty empire. The streets of London in the afternoon take on a different rhythm. The clatter of morning deliveries fades into a quieter drone of commerce. Wheelbarrows rattle less frantically. Horses slow their pace. And in the parlors, sculleries, and sitting rooms of terraced homes and townhouses, the battle against the omnipresent dust resumes. You, Mr. Mallow, feather duster salesman of some local repute, have made your way from the domestic boroughs of Clapham to the slightly more aspirational streets near Camden. Here, you adjust your pitch, ever so slightly. The maids you speak to wear aprons with embroidered initials. Their masters may own second pianos. The silver, while rarely real, is polished weekly with a discipline bordering on religious. Your morning's crate is now lighter by 2 goose feather dusters and one of the experimental polish hen models, though you still hold out hope that someone will pay full shilling for your last proud ostrich duster, a regal fan of dark, flowing plumes fixed to a rosewood handle. You take a moment behind a lamppost and run your gloved fingers over the feathers to fluff them for display. A well-groomed duster is a persuasive tool. Just as barbers comb their brushes and bootblacks buff their kits, so too must a duster look presentable. The appearance of fluff implies quality. A limp duster suggests failure, or worse, last year's stock. You continue along a row of shopfronts, including a milliner's that once mistook you for a furrier, and a stationery vendor who asked if you sold those feather pens, the fancy ones for letters to Parliament. At the corner of Bellingham Street, you set up your temporary display. It's not a stall, you haven't the license, but rather a calculated loitering. You find a stone ledge just below the window of an old chemist and prop open your crate. Feather dusters stand at attention inside, like soldiers in a parade. Of down and quill, passersby glance, some pause. A few approach. Are they fresh? Asks a young governess with a silk bonnet and a suspicious brow. They were hand-tied 2 days ago, you reply, gently lifting one from its resting place. This one's goose, harvested from the Yorkshire farms, trimmed just short enough to maintain flexibility. Any for shelves with carvings? Asks another. You reach for the hen feather prototype. Thin, flexible, with a double-folded spine. Bends nicely around decorative edges, you explain, gently curling the neck in demonstration. Ideal for intricately carved furniture, like clawfoot tables or busts of noblemen. Your words, while technically accurate, are also rehearsed. You've delivered these lines dozens, perhaps hundreds of times. You once sold 5 in a single afternoon after convincing a homeowner that feathers left fewer scratches than rags. Which is true technically, provided the rag is dry and the feather is oiled. Still, success is rarely about the facts. It's about tone. You speak softly, with confidence, and most importantly, as though you understand dust personally. Because you do. It clings to your boots, your breath, your ledger. And then there's the matter of feather economics. Ostrich feathers are your most prized, not because they clean better. They don't. Not particularly, but because they represent exoticism. They suggest a connection to something beyond the grimy streets of London, to vast savannas and colonies, to wild birds harvested by silent hands. The empire may be a geopolitical concept to some, but to you, it's a supply chain. You acquired your ostrich feathers through a cousin in the Port Authority, who in turn sourced them from a merchant who received them, possibly indirectly, from South African farms. You pay more for them, naturally, but the margins are just enough to make the occasional sale worthwhile, especially if you pair the pitch with a hint of mystique. This one, you say to a curious passerby, was assembled from plumage once reserved for the hat trade, the finest of ostrich down. Look at the length of the barbules. See how it holds its shape. They rarely ask what a barbule is. They simply nod, impressed by the sound of it. A man with a curled mustache and an umbrella pauses. What about ceilings, he asks. My sitting room has cornices. Haven't been dusted in ages, you nod solemnly. May I present the reach extender, you reply, removing a long-handled model from the bottom of the crate. It's goose feather, bound with wire, fixed to a 32-inch pine shaft, adjustable angle. He asks, you smile, of course. A slight pressure here, you tap a concealed hinge, allows the feather head to tilt. Very useful for cornices, picture frames, and chandeliers. He examines it like a telescope. And the cost? 1 shilling and 6pence, you say. But I can include a polishing cloth for free. He nods, deliberates, and walks away. You are not discouraged. Dust, like opportunity, accumulates with time. You remain in position until the cathedral bells strike 3. By then, you've sold 2 more goose dusters and received 3 strong inquiries. One woman asked about seasonal models, a trend. You've considered lighter feathers for summer? Scented options with lavender sachets? Perhaps even detachable heads? You jot these thoughts down in the margins of your ledger. Then comes your appointment. The Mayweather House, a 5-story townhouse near Islington, known among dustman and rag sellers as the Sahara of interiors. Its mistress, a Mrs. Penelope Mayweather, is infamous for her standards. She once dismissed a maid for dust on a bedpost. Another time, she was seen inspecting picture frames with a white glove and a monocle. You are punctual. You knock twice. On the servant's door, it's opened by a wiry butler with eyebrows like twigs. You'll wait in the vestibule, he says, leading you inside without breaking eye contact. The interior is overwhelming. Polished floorboards that reflect light like mirrors, crystal doorknobs, And furniture so well dusted you can smell the beeswax, Mrs. Mayweather descends the staircase wearing gloves and a lace collar the size of a salad plate. "You're the duster man," she says, peering at your crate. "Yes, ma'am," she gestures. "Demonstrate, you are ready." You produce a medium-length ostrich duster and approach a marble mantel. With slow, deliberate strokes, you whisk along the top, flick gently around a porcelain clock, and pass once beneath a crystal vase. She steps forward and with practiced precision, inspects the surface. "Acceptable," she says. "Do you deliver monthly?" "I can, yes." "Would you prefer goose, hen, or a blend?" She considers this as if you've asked her to choose a flavor of wine. 2 goose, 1 ostrich, and 1 corner flexible model. Delivered by foot. Wednesdays only. You nod. Of course, she waves her hand like a queen dispersing a servant. You are shown out. This is your greatest success today. Not the sale, but the contract. Regular customers, especially discerning ones, provide consistency. And in your line of work, consistency is gold dust. As you step back into the street, the afternoon light slants toward dusk. The fog has lifted a little, and in its place is the muted yellow of a city, both exhausted and endlessly churning. You still have 2 dusters left and a few houses to visit before supper. But you pause, just briefly, at a bench by the canal. Your hands are tired, your feet ache. But in your crate lies evidence of a trade that most forget exists. You are a salesman of cleanliness in a city built on coal and soot. A vendor of order in a world that naturally tends toward disorder. And even though most days are slow, repetitive, and laden with rejection, you know something most don't. Dust always returns. Which means in time, so will the need for feathers. The end of the feather age and the slow rise of synthetic dust. By the 1890s, the shape of London had begun to change, not abruptly, not loudly, but with the slow, steady progress of a city molting its soot-stained feathers for something colder. Shinier and decidedly less organic, you still Mr. Mallow, still a feather duster salesman, begin to notice the changes in small ways. First, it's the advertisements. Not handbills nailed to lampposts, but printed spreads in household gazettes. The modern dust cloth, a chemical marvel, they proclaim, removes soot and grease without a trace. You read such headlines over tea in the rear room of a lodging house where you rent space by the month and share a kettle with a chimney sweep 2 floors up. He too has noticed a change. Fewer homes with fireplaces, fewer children sent up the flues. In his case, it's good news. In yours, it feels more like a shadow creeping over your livelihood. Then come the customers. One by one, they vanish. Not dramatically, they simply stop answering the door. Or they say they're treeing something new, a treated rag, a Swedish mop, even something called German duster wool. That smells faintly of kerosene. The feather trade itself grows brittle. Prices rise. Your cousin at the Port Authority tells you that ostrich shipments have grown inconsistent, something about political instability and tariffs. Even goose feathers cost more than they used to. And a growing number of your fellow peddlers have switched to cleaning vinegar, polish bottles, or brushes with brass wire bristles. You try a few yourself, but the feel is wrong. You were born into feathers, you think. Or at least feather adjacent. You revise your routine. You shift from door to door to appointments. You stop wandering the nicer neighborhoods and instead rely on a printed list of repeat clients, most of whom are older and suspicious of new inventions. Mrs. Mayweather continues her Wednesday orders, though she now requires you to deliver to the servant's door without ringing the bell. Less fuss, she says through the gap in the door. You oblige. The customer is always right, even when they're disappearing. By 1895, you reduce your crate to a satchel. The full-sized feather display, the one you once fanned out like a merchant in a Turkish bazaar, now feels excessive. Too theatrical. People want discretion, simplicity. The age of the bustling salesman is being replaced by something subtler. Catalogs, postal deliveries, imported goods with names that sound scientific. You hear of a new device, the vacuum dust extractor. It is large, expensive, and requires 2 men to operate. But it works. In Mayfair, you hear it cleaned an entire ballroom in an hour. The idea terrifies and fascinates you in equal measure. You still sell a few feather dusters each month. A widow in Greenwich buys only ostrich, convinced that they carry less ill luck. A baker's wife in Paddington prefers goose for the top shelves. You cherish these moments, holding them gently in your memory like eggs in a basket you dare not shake. But more often, you are turned away with a nod and a polite lie, already sorted, thank you, or worse. We've gone modern. You try pivoting. You visit a tradesman in Hackney who offers to teach you how to make cleaning cloths from cotton offcuts. He suggests you pivot to maintenance products, a vague term encompassing oils, soaps, and polish tins. You try. For 2 months you carry small bottles of lemon oil polish beside your remaining dusters. You sell a few. It helps, but at night you dream of feathers, not birds, just feathers, falling gently through air, settling on the shoulders of chairs, the backs of clocks, the grooves of carved banisters. By 1897, the writing is on the wall. Your ostrich supplier closes his stall. Goose feather prices spike. You can no longer guarantee quality, and customers notice. Even Mrs. Mayweather, one damp Wednesday. You arrive to find the butler, not her, waiting at the door. He hands you an envelope. Inside, 3 shillings and a note. Thank you for years of service. We are modernizing our household. No further deliveries required. You stand on the cobbled doorstep for a moment, longer than necessary. The air smells of coal and early frost. You watch as the butler closes the door, slowly, politely, and then you turn, satchel swinging loosely at your side. The next day, you visit the rag market on Lillington Lane. You sell your remaining goose feathers, even your last rosewood-handled ostrich duster. The man behind the table doesn't look at you when he counts your coins. You don't blame him. You don't stop being a salesman. That instinct remains. But over time, the feathers vanish from your inventory. In their place, cloth, polish, small brushes, a few tin cans of ammonia. You walk the same streets, knock on fewer doors, speak a little less, but your voice is steady, your tone calm. Your work still is to fight dust, though now you do. So without plumage, years pass. By 1905, you're a familiar figure in your neighborhood. The gentleman with the gray hat and brown satchel, who still wipes his boots before entering every home. You are no longer young, but your gait remains upright. You keep your hands clean and your ledger tidy. You pass a shop window one morning and see something that stops you cold. It's a feather duster. Goose, possibly duck, new, cheap. In the window next to it is a sign. Imported from America, the original electrostatic dusting solution. You smile, not in mockery, not in sadness, just in recognition. The duster still lives. Not in your satchel, perhaps. Not with the care and ceremony you once offered it. But it exists, in homes, in hands, in corners and crevices where dust will always settle, and with that, you turn away from the window and continue your walk, past iron lampposts, past ash carts and letterboxes, past rows of windows that will always need cleaning. In the quiet of the evening, you return home. Your satchel rests by the door. You make tea. You sit by the window, outside. The wind picks up just slightly, lifting a curtain of invisible dust from the streets and sending it swirling into the air, looking, for just a moment, like a ghost. Of feathers reflection, though forgotten by most, the Victorian feather duster salesman was a quiet soldier in the empire of cleanliness, fighting soot and time with humble tools of down and wood. His work lives on in every flick of a modern duster, every swipe along the shelf. He was not a man of revolution or invention, but of habit, service, and persistence. And perhaps that's what makes history worth remembering. Not only the loud moments, but the soft ones too. Like feathers falling in silence. Thank you for joining us on this quiet journey through forgotten history. If you found comfort in the calm, or simply drifted off somewhere between the dust and the doorbells, we invite you to gently like this video, share it with someone who enjoys slow stories, and subscribe to the Quiet Boring Sleep channel for more peaceful tales from the past. Until next time, sleep well and dream of simpler times. Good night, and take care.